game 3 of our May 1813 campaign. So the Prussian forces have suffered 2 defeats, being thrown back from defending the crossings at Charleroi and the cavalry combat at Binch. As a result of that, they've fallen back towards Linney, and we've got a defence of Linney taking place here. The French forces are 2 divisions who are assaulting this position, supported by a cuirassier brigade, and we have 2 Prussian brigades plus the remnants of their 1st Cavalry Brigade defending the crossings here. Let's have a look at the Prussian forces first. So we have the remains of the 2nd Brigade. So we have the Westphalian Landwehr. One of the battalions is a reduced strength now, is a small battalion. They did fall back from the table at Charleroi. Were driven off by the French attack, but they didn't suffer many casualties. They were the 1st Prussian unit to retire, so they're pretty intact here. Then we have the Fusilier and Musketeer regiments of the 6th Infantry Regiment. The 3rd Battalion is still reforming. It had taken 11 out of 12 casualties, and therefore we've deemed it won't be able to take its position on the table here today. The Prussians have called up artillery batteries from their reserve, so we have 1 artillery battery in place here and a 2nd one in place on the hill on the left flank. We have the Berg infantry, which again fell back successfully from the assault on Charleroi and didn't suffer major casualties. They've been reinforced by the 5th Brigade. We have a regular infantry regiment in the centre right. We've got Lutzow's brigade or regiment on the far right flank, and we have a unit of Landwehr infantry and the 1st Cavalry Brigade in reserve. Facing off against these, we have elements of the 1st and 2nd Division. The 1st Brigade of the 1st Division is on table here, but the 2nd Brigade is yet to arrive. The Corps and the Divisional Artillery are in place on that flank there, and as we move across to the centre here, we can see the 2nd Division, all 8 battalions on table, and they're supporting artillery in the centre. Alright, so the French were deemed to have initiative and have moved on to the table, so now be a chance for the Prussians to fire, as the French batteries are all deemed to have moved up and unlimbered this turn, so they won't be doing any firing themselves. So turn 1, return fire for the Prussians. Okay, so the Prussian heavy battery will open fire on this flank. A heavy battery has got 12-pounder guns, so out to 30 inches is effective range. So these French, just the other side of the hedge, are at effective range. Let's see how we do as they open up for the first time. They roll a 3. That's pretty tragic. That goes down to a 2, so that will be a fatigue casualty on the Prussian artillery, just getting their first ranging shots in. Right, so moving along the line from our artillery on the far left flank, clearly our garrison here is out of range and our skirmishers are just out of range of the advancing French skirmishers. So next to shoot will be this artillery battery. It's firing at long range against the advancing French battalions. Do a bit better this time. So at long range we roll a 7, that's half a casualty, a 4, 5 or 6 to convert. It doesn't convert, so no casualties from the Prussian guns, and nothing else will be in range. So that's the end of turn 1, and we'll come back with the first proper turn of the game, turn 2. So let's roll for ADC. So the Prussians have 7 brigades in this game, 5 on table. Not a great roll, yeah, 3 2s, that's a pretty terrible roll. And 2 off table, these ones need 5s. Okay, so that's 3 ADCs for the Prussians to deploy this turn. Alright, let's see what we do. I'm not looking for any major movement from my Prussian forces, so we'll probably go for artillery assault in the centre on this brigade, and we'll roll for activation. Starting with our far brigade, they need a 3+, they're active. This brigade in the centre, they need a 3+, they're active. Our Berg infantry with the artillery are active, so going pretty well for the Prussians. Our Fusiliers in the centre are active, and then our Landwehr on the flank are hesitant. So just 1 hesitant brigade for the Prussians. We'll just turn the commander around to remind me they are hesitant, and that'll be a -1 modifier for their activation. Alright, let's move on and do the French activation. Right, so the French have 6 brigades, 3 on table. better ADC rolls. They activate all those 3. And then 2 cuirassier and 1 infantry brigade off table, needing 5s. So the French have got 4 ADCs. So a better deployment. We might start by putting an infantry assault on the brigade in the centre, opposite the village, and the centre of the Prussian position, and then we're going to put a reroll on our brigade over here. So let's do the brigade in the centre. It is active, and then the 6th Battalion Infantry Brigade opposite the village is also active and has infantry assault in place. And then a reroll for, no, that's it. That's all my brigades that are on the table. All right, that's it. Time for movement, or rather, sorry, time for initiative. Prussians have 1 hesitant brigade, French have none. So this will be +1 to the French. The French roll a 7. The Prussians roll an 8. The Prussians had a -1, as we didn't have a previous turn with initiative. We'll roll again. French get 8, Prussians get 8, the Prussians get a -1. So the French have initiative and get to move first in turn 2. Alright, as you might have heard, I did get myself slightly confused over my French brigades. We had 2 more battalions following on the 3 brigade formation that was on table. So the 5 battalions in that brigade are now on table. This brigade would have needed a separate ADC roll. It didn't have an ADC allocated. I have rolled for it. It got a 3, so it is active as well. So the whole of this French division of 8 battalions is rolling forward towards the Linney village. In response, the French skirmish screens have also moved forward, and the Prussians have moved up to confront them. The Berg skirmishers from the small Berg regiment have also moved up the road, and we've moved this battalion up in support and deployed this battalion in line to reduce the threat from the French artillery fire over there. Over here, the Prussian forces remain unchanged, and the French brigade that is on table is moving forward in the centre. The French will need to bring on their 2nd brigade with a reserve roll, a reserve ADC allocation in due course. Alright, that's it. It'll be time for the French to open fire with their skirmishers and their artillery, as they have the initiative in turn 2. Okay, let's work up with the French artillery. They're going to start doing some counter battery fire. We believe this will be at long range against the Prussian guns. Pretty good roll. We rolled an 11. At long range is 2 casualties and a discipline test on the Prussian guns. Let's see if they can avoid a disaster on the first turn. Whoa, saw that one coming up. They go unformed, and that is 2 casualties on the Prussian guns. Okay, so the divisional artillery is going to open up, and it will fire against this Lutzow battalion in the open. It is at long range. French roll a 6, that will just be half a casualty. Let's see if it converts. It does. That's 1 casualty on this battalion. And then the 12-pounders are going to open up against the same target. With the longer range of the 12-pounders, this is an effective range shot. That is a 4. That doesn't cause any casualties. We are going to have to bring some French reinforcements on here, because these Prussian skirmishers up against this hedge line are going to have a pretty devastating effect against our artillery battery on that hill. Alright, that's the French guns fired across the whole of the front line. Let's do the return fire from the Prussian guns. The skirmishers are fired to no great effect. So we will fire this battery, and we will fire against that line battalion. We are at -2 because we are unformed. Pretty good. We roll a 10, and I expect that will be at long range. So that will be 2 casualties. A 10 goes down to an 8. That'll be 1 casualty on that closest French battalion. And finally, the French battery on the far left-hand hill will open up on the flank of the French attack down here. This again is at effective range. Wow, we are rolling well for our artillery at the beginning of the range. So that will be 4 casualties on the French. It'll be a destiny test and a falter test. So this will be a test at -1. They roll a 5, so that will be a 4 casualties, and that French battalion goes unformed. Actually, just correct that, it's 3 casualties because they had cover from that hedge line from the artillery shot. But we've still got the destiny test to do, so let's roll for destiny and see what we achieve with that double 6 from the Prussian guns. Reroll an 8, which is recover a casualty, which indeed we did take. We took a fatigue casualty in the last turn. So the Prussian guns are back at full strength, and are starting to disrupt the French attack formations. All right, let's roll up for ADCs and initiative in turn 3. All right, pretty good activation for the Prussians. All these brigades are active through the centre and through to the Berg. The artillery battery in the centre, although unformed, has got artillery assault off. Unfortunately, this battalion in the centre right has gone hesitant. The Lutzow battalion is also active. So Prussians are at -1 and have got artillery assault in place. For the French, the brigade in the centre here is gone hesitant. It had no ADCs allocated, but we did allocate 3 ADCs for a reserve role, and we have brought on our 2nd Infantry Brigade in that division, and all these brigades on the left are active. So the French are also at -1. So let's roll for initiative. Both sides are on a -1, and the French had initiative last turn. So the French roll a 10. The French retain initiative as we move into turn 4. Okay, so I did get that wrong. It is still turn 3. The French moved onto the table in the first turn, moved forward in the second, moved up to the river in the third. So here we are on turn 3. The Prussians, seeing no threat on this flank here, are potentially considering launching a counterattack with their Landwehr, who are moving round this gun battery. Otherwise, position in the centre remains unchanged. The Berg infantry have deployed into line down here and moved forward a bit. We have artillery assault on this gun battery, and for the French, we've got a new brigade of infantry starting to move onto the table on that flank to drive off these Prussian skirmishers. All right, that's it for movement. No substantial movement this turn, and next will be firing. Right, so no major impact from the various different skirmish screens, although the Prussian skirmish screen down here did inflict a further 2 casualties on the 12-pounder battery. Just did all the skirmishers to get those out of the way. All right, let's open fire with the 12-pounders again, going against this Lutzow battalion in the centre, out in the open. They roll an 8, and that's at effective range. That's 2 more casualties against this Lutzow battalion. The first 2 of the game, actually. So let's get a casualty counter. Mark them up. 2 casualties on the Lutzow battalion. All right, and then we'll open up with the divisional artillery against the same target. This is at long range. That's an 8. There's 1 more casualty. So first casualties are starting to come in from the French artillery, and then the divisional artillery in the centre will again have a go at the Prussian artillery, trying to weaken the defence. We roll a 6. Going against artillery, that'll be a 4, that'll be no effect. Then finally, we've got firing by the Prussians. We've got our heavy artillery battery over here, going to go against the French. They've only just reformed. They're a nice juicy target. Let's see what we do. At effective range, that's a 10. That's another good result. I think 3 casualties, but I will just check. That's a 9 actually, because of the light cover from the hedge, but it's still a discipline test, and it'll be at -1. They roll a 7. That unfortunately goes down to a 6, so they go unformed. We'll move them into unformed status in a second. And then finally, we'll fire our battery here, which has got artillery assault. So I need a couple of black dice and a couple of blue dice. The black dice will be for the base roll, and the blue dice will be for the combat dice for the artillery effect, artillery assault effect. This will be at -2 because we formed up this turn, and I think that will count as movement. We're going to fire at this French infantry battalion here. Actually, I think that's screened by our own skirmishers. We'll have to fire at that battalion there in the front. So be at effective range. We roll a 9, and we get 1 other casualty. Check that range, see if it's short, effective or long. So it was quite easily at effective range. So that's 3 casualties on that unit and a discipline test. So let's see how the French do. They roll a 9. They remain formed. All right. Whoa. I'm not sure if I took off the -2 for movement. Apologies if I didn't. I think I didn't. We will just check. That was at effective range. Would be only 1 casualty. So I'll knock 1 off. Hopefully I've got that right. But we'll see. All right, that's it for firing. There's nothing else at the end of turn 3. We'll move on with turn 4. All right, not the most successful turn for activations. The Prussians had 3 ADCs, and they rolled to bring their cavalry reserve on this flank. which they failed that roll, and then they failed their activation roll for this landwehr and for the regulars in the centre. The other 3 brigades are active. For the French, they only had 3 ADCs. They failed their re-rolls. The only activation was this 1 brigade in the centre. So the French have 3 hesitant brigades, the Prussians 2. So this will be -1 off the French roll. They roll a 7, but they keep the initiative as the Prussians only have a 5. So they have a sufficient margin. All right, French to move first. Let's see if they do any charges in turn 4. Okay, so we've conducted infantry assault with this French brigade. This brigade would be in charge range, but it's got a wheel around that building, and you can only wheel in a charge in your first 3-inch bonus movement, which would take them approximately to about here, and then they wouldn't be able to turn again to crash into this column. So yeah, they've been unable to complete their charge, but down here these 3 battalions of the same brigade have charged into the village. There will be some defensive fire, but you automatically charge home against buildings. So we'll do that defensive fire. Let's do that. Three shots out of the undamaged Fusilier Musketeer battalion in the building, and we cause 1 casualty on the attacking French battalion, and then we'll get on with normal movement. Okay, so the Westphalian Landwehr are unable to continue their flanking move because they are hesitant. The French were unable to advance here because that brigade was hesitant. The charges have gone in here. The Berg have slightly redeployed, pull their attacking or their most forward battalion back a little bit. Their line potentially nearly in play. We've moved up our Landwehr Lancers as a flanking unit to potentially go into the flank of the French assault over here to create a threat. Otherwise, that's pretty much it, with everything else being immobile. All right, now for French to open fire as they have the initiative. Okay, again, opening fire with the guns on the ridge against the Lutzow battalion. Starting with the heavy battery at long range, at effective range, 6 will be 1 casualty, and then the divisional artillery, and 8 at long range is 1 casualty. So 2 more casualties on the Lutzow. They are starting to suffer. The Prussian skirmishers now need to return fire against the French guns on the ridge. Let's see what they do. Wow, that's pretty good. That's 2 more casualties on the 12-pounders. Just put a 2 up there. We'll mark those up in a second. These skirmishers exchanged fire to no great effect. We've now got the French battery up there. It's going to have a go at firing at long range, and it's going to go against this. I think it's going to go against these lancers. They may be at effective range. We'll try firing at them. We roll a 7, and if that's at effective range, that'll be 1 casualty. If it's at long range, it'll be a half. We'll check that and mark it up. So it was indeed at effective range, 22 inches, so that's 1 casualty on the lancers. Prussian guns will open up and they will fire. Can't fire at that French battalion, so we will fire at the French battalion again that we targeted last time. At effective range, we roll a 7. That'll just be 1 more casualty onto this French battalion, takes them up to 3. And then we do have no more artillery. Oh no, we've got the Prussian battery up here. It's taken 2 casualties as a result of some French skirmisher fire this turn. It'll again fire at the unit down in the valley. It is still marked as disordered. It will have undisordered itself as a result of its movement this turn. We roll a 6 at effective range, is just 1 casualty and no discipline test. So we'll just mark that up on that unit and form it. And then final act of the turn, we'll do a volley against this skirmish screen by these Prussian Fusiliers. They are veterans, so this will be a superior volley against those skirmishers in the open. So it'll be at -2. So a superior volley goes down to a 4. That's 1 casualty on the French skirmisher screen. And that's it for turn 4. All right, we'll now have a go and do the hand-to-hand combat as the French try and capture Ligny village. Right, straight roll off here. Prussians get the advantage of being in a built-up area, so they get 1 more combat dice than the French. And actually, yeah, that's it. So the French have caused 2 casualties, and the Prussians have actually only caused 1 casualty. We'll now potentially go on to a second round of combat. Let's see what the Prussians choose to do. This could be a real bloodbath. The French have got 2 supports that they can throw in that are supporting their assaulting battalion. The Prussians also have a support to the left and the Berg to the right. So it'll actually be 15 dice each side. You don't get a combat modifier. So we'll roll the first 10 for the Prussians, and then we get to re-roll 5 misses. This looks pretty good for the Prussians. Okay, and then re-roll their misses, so this will take them up to 15. Alright, so actually not so good after the re-roll. So only 6 hits for the Prussians. So let's see how the French do. 10 dice to start with, then 5 re-rolls. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So they've already got 6 hits. And then 5 re-rolls. So that's 8 hits to the French, 6 to the Prussians. The French have won by 2, and they've stormed the village. Alright, it's caused no difference to the combat, but I forgot, we actually had our combat engineers fighting with that first assaulting battalion. They should have had a role in the first turn as well as in the second turn. And we rolled it for the second turn. It did cause 1 more casualty on the Prussians, but the result is exactly the same. They retreat out of the village. So the French have taken Ligny, they've occupied it. The Berg have fallen back behind their supports, but the regular brigade retreated off table. It had no supports to fall back behind, so it'll take some Prussian reserves to counterattack and try and retake the village. Let's see what we do as we move on to the start of turn 5. Okay, so the Prussians have done exceptionally well with their ADCs. They had 6, so they've brought on their reserve Landwehr and the 1st Cavalry Brigade. As a result, all their other brigades had to rely on raw rolls, so this brigade here in the centre went hesitant, but my other forces, including the Landwehr in the far corner, are all active. For the French, they only got 4 ADCs, but they did them all on re-rolls, so all French brigades are active, and the French again hold the initiative. So French charges first, if they have any of them. Right, so the only charge this turn is the French as they come through the village. These 2 battalions, supported by the other one that's come over the bridge, are assaulting the Berg infantry. They will get to do a defensive volley. Okay, so this will be a standard volley. We will get a combat dice because we're firing at a column at less than 3 inches, but the French will get a -1 because of the protection from the majority of the volley by the hedge. So the Prussians roll a 9, that goes down to an 8. That is 3 casualties on the attacking French column. It'll be a tough one for them to succeed in the charge. That takes them up to 5, so it'll be a -3 modifier for their charge. Let's see how they do as the charge tries to go in. So this will be a net +3 modifier for the Prussians. See how we do. So the Prussians roll a tremendous 11. The French will have to use both their rerolls, I think. They only roll a 5, so they've lost by 6. So the French get thrown back and the Berg hold this part of the line. Right, so the French continue to press up into the village, seeking to capture that. The Prussian Landwehr Lancers have moved across to potentially do a flanking attack next turn. The Berg will remain unformed down here, having retreated from the village combat. Over here on the left hand, actually they'll be able to form up. Actually on the left hand side, the Prussian heavy cavalry reserve has arrived to potentially counterattack in this direction, and the Landwehr are moving across to put pressure on the village and the French right. Whereas down here on the left, again we've got the other Landwehr reserve brigade regiment moving towards Ligny. So Landwehr on the left with heavy cavalry, the Berg and more Landwehr on the right, and the rest of the line still holding firm. Let's see what happens as we continue to fight for the village. Right, Charlie has now arrived to take command of the Prussians, so expect a change of fortune, but French go first. So we'll have some firing by the French artillery batteries on the hill. Let's get started with those. All right, so opening fire with the French heavy battery against the Lutzow infantry again. We get a 7 minus 1 at effective range. At 6 is 1 casualty on the Lutzow, isn't it, Charlie? And then the divisional artillery firing at long range gets a 7. A long range 7 is a half a casualty. Let's see if that converts. It doesn't. So that's the French artillery on the hill firing. We'll fire the French skirmishers against the Prussian skirmishers here. We don't do any casualties. And then the French artillery there will fire at effective range against the flank of this Lancer unit. Let's see what they do. That's pretty good. That's a 10 against a small unit as well. So at effective range, that is 3 casualties and a discipline test on those Lancers. That's a discipline test at -1, Charlie. 9. Okay, so they're okay, but I've taken a few extra casualties. Otherwise, charges have been complete. We will fire from the village. This will be 2 dice as we occupy the village, but we're unformed. We don't do any casualties. And then our skirmishers will open fire from cover against the cavalry. So they can fire. They cause 1 casualty against the cavalry, if you get me a cavalry marker. And then we're going to fire at the guns as well, with our skirmish screen up there. And we cause 1 more casualty against the guns. So 1 casualty on the dragoons, 1 casualty on the guns. And I think that's French firing for the turn. Now over to the Prussians. All right, so Prussians opening fire. So skirmishers going first. That'll be 2 dice because you're firing against cover.
Nothing.
Okay.
Skirmishers against your skirmishers, 2 dice.
Yeah. Nothing.
And then the gun.
Yeah, what are you going to fire your gun crew at?
Do you think that column would be?
This one here?
Yeah.
Or that one there? That one there, probably.
That one. 11.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's going to be, I think, at effective range, which if it is, will be 3 casualties and a discipline test.
Combat dice too.
If it's at effective range, yeah, you're right. Which won't do anything. We'll just check the range. So Charlie's pivoted his heavy 12-pounders, so they can keep this battalion they've been firing at throughout the game in range. Let's see what you get, Charlie. 2 shots. What do you get?
6.
A 6.
-2 is just nothing.
Yeah, okay, that's no effect on them. All right, and no more skirmishers, Charlie? No, because they've been driven off the table. That's it. That's the end of turn 5. Let's move on with ADCs for turn 6. Unfortunately for Charlie, this left flank has all gone, hesitant for the Prussians, for the cavalry, but the Landwehr are active. He has put infantry assault on his Berg infantry, potentially with a view to try and recapture the village this turn. It could be his best chance, but his reinforcing Landwehr over there went inactive. A couple of my brigades went inactive as well, and I failed to bring my cuirassiers on. So Charlie's certainly got a bit of cavalry superiority at the moment. He needs to exploit that. All right, French have initiative. Let's see if there are any charges. So no charges for the French, but Charlie's used his infantry assault to counterattack with his Berg infantry while my French garrison is occupied. They will get a defensive volley, but they don't cause any casualties. So that'll be resolved in the hand-to-hand combat section. Right, now for normal movement. Artillery, and unfortunately for the Prussians, they forgot to move their cavalry last turn, so they're still in line with the French guns. So firing at effective range, we get a 9. What's that, Charlie?
Close range.
Effective range.
2 casualties and a discipline test.
Okay, they got to 6. That's discipline test at -1. Okay, they go unformed. Right. Then opening up with the French heavy artillery. First one firing against the Lutzow again. That's 9. That's at effective range. That will go down to an 8 because we've got the casualties. So that's 2 casualties on the Lutzow, Charlie. And then the other battery will fire at the same target. And we get an 8 at long range, which is just 1 casualty, isn't it? 1 more casualty on the Lutzow. And I think that's the French firing for the turn. So pretty good. We're starting to put some pressure on this right flank of Charlie's. But it does look like we're in real trouble in the centre here as Charlie's counterattack is moving forward. All right, Charlie, you're firing now. Your skirmish screen.
So
3 shots from that screen. What are you firing at?
that's that one.
Okay, 1 casualty on them.
Then my other skirmish screen.
Yeah, against my skirmishers. There'll be 2 shots. Nope.
My
Your guns down here.
gun against.
I think you have to fire at that one in the rear, probably. That's 6. That'll be half a casualty at long range. No.
And then my gun on the hill can't fire anything.
No, because it's screened.
That's it. So
Okay. You've got skirmishers down here. You could fire into that column. Wow, that's for discipline test. So how many casualties are they on now, Charlie? How many?
3.
3, okay. A 5, they go unformed. If you could make them they're already unformed, aren't they, Charlie? All right, that's it for shooting. I think that's all our shooting complete. Now the crunch of the turn, we got some hand-to-hand combat. The first round of combat, we both get 4 dice, very much in the mix. Oh my God, I just saw what Charlie rolled. I've got to roll that one again, yeah? Okay, I cost 2, you cost 4. The French are thrown out and the Prussians have recaptured the village. Right, here we are at the end of turn 5 and it's getting to be crunch for the French. So the Landwehr have moved off the hill. We've got a deep outflanking unit and 2 others putting pressure on the left flank of this French brigade. And this battalion is the one that's taken all the casualties from the artillery fire. We've got a bunch of Prussian heavy dragoons, also able to counterattack in this direction. The Berg infantry have successfully recaptured Linney, and this whole brigade with infantry assault, every single unit in it is unformed. Really critical. They are able to form up, but also critical. I get my cuirassiers on, or I'm not going to be able to stop Charlie's counterattack on the left. The only thing that's helping me is on the right. Things are pretty static for Charlie. Is taking casualties from my large battery, but I don't have any infantry assault orders on over there. So it's looking pretty tough for the French at the moment. They desperately need their reserves. Let's see what happens as we roll for ADC. Pretty good turn for the Prussians. Unfortunately, their cavalry, clearly because of all of the rough handling they took in the last game, are not active. But Charlie's Landwehr on the flank are active. All this mass of French infantry in the centre, unfortunately, is hesitant. The Berg, I think, are also hesitant, aren't they, Charlie?
Oh, yeah.
But it didn't matter. They'll be able to form up this turn. Otherwise, the French are also hesitant in the centre here, but they did get artillery assault off on the left flank. Infantry assault. And Charlie, as you may see, has broken one of his Lutzow battalions up into skirmishers to reinforce his skirmish screen, and he'll probably have to bring that battalion forward as a reserve. All right, that's it. Charlie, for the first time in the game for the Prussians, has 1 initiative. Let's see what the Prussians will do. In turn, what turn number are we on, Charlie?
6.
Okay, I think that was the end of turn 6, so this will be turn 7. Right, so the French have decided to do a charge. They're going against the Lutzow on this flank. Unfortunately for Charlie, his skirmishers failed their discipline test, so they've had to fall back and haven't been able to add their firepower. So let's do this charge result. So first it's a defensive volley. This will be a standard volley. Plus a combat dice, because you're firing at 3 inches range. That's pretty good. That's a 10 and an extra casualty. So a standard volley at 10 causes 4, so that's 5 casualties on the attacking French column. You put the majority on the front one, so it's 3 on the front one and 2 on the supports.
On this one?
Yeah. No, on the other one, because you said that one wasn't a support.
It couldn't fire against that one though.
Yes, it can. It just goes through the gap. Unless it's out of range. If it's out of range as a support, which it might be, then they all 5 go on the front one.
So 2.
Okay, and we'll then now check what the charge result is. Rolling this is +3 to the Prussians. The French get a terrible... we're not going to be able to beat an 8. we get a 5. Look, you shove the table, Charlie. So you've won by 3 and the bonus of 3, so you've won by 6. So I am thrown back. And I think I take D3 casualties. So the French assault has been thrown back. The lead unit suffered 5 casualties, I think, in total, and is retreating. The other one retired. Its support retired with it. All right, that's the end of charges, I think, this turn. It'll now be normal movement, first for the French and then the Prussians. Right, so Charlie's moving his Landwehr up to potentially crash into the flank of this position. We've definitely got a falter test now in the centre here. So many retreating brigades, battalions. We have been able to bring the cuirassiers on as reserves for the French. That's one of our brigades. And over here, we were thrown back in that charge. So, yeah, your Landwehr weren't able to move, were they? I mean, you've moved that, and Charlie's moved this Prussian column up to start filling the gap in the line there. All right, Charlie, you're firing. Where are you going to start first?
So I'll fire these skirmishers against
Yep.
them.
Okay, 2 dice.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Gun.
Yep.
Against them.
Okay, this
2
will be
dice.
at long range probably.
Half a casualty.
Half a casualty, which does convert. How many are there on, Charlie?
6.
Okay.
Then
You've got Berg skirmishers down here. You could have moved them up a bit. Let's just put them there.
them.
Okay, against them.
1 dice or 2.
2 dice for 2 bases.
And
No.
then from here to here.
Okay, 3 shots from the garrison now, firing at this battalion.
2 casualties.
2 casualties. We'll mark them up in a second. We'll just
And
put
then
dice next to them.
That gun. Will it
Okay.
fire against that unit?
It can probably fire at the cuirassiers at long range.
Half
5 is half a casualty. That's
One.
1 casualty on the cuirassiers. If you could get a cuirassier casualty marker, we've got some cavalry ones, and 1 for my French infantry as well.
I've got them here.
Okay. All right, and then it'll be turn for the French firing. -1. So we're firing the French guns at this line battalion down here. We roll a 7, that goes down to a 6. That's just be half a casualty, which does convert. That's 1 casualty on that Prussian battalion down here. We'll fire our skirmishers at your skirmish screen. We cause 1 casualty. We will...
Can't do anything else.
we can't do anything else, I think.
Next
That's
turn.
it for the French end of the turn. What was that the end of turn of, Charlie?
7.
Okay, on we go with turn 8. Can the French hang on? Can the Prussians break this French army? Right, so Charlie's done pretty well. Most of his units have gone active. He's got infantry assault off on the Landwehr, and needless to say, for the 3rd turn in a row, his cavalry is still hesitant. For the French, the cuirassiers are active, which is good, and all other brigades are active. But first, and most importantly, we've got to do our falter test against this brigade in the centre. We roll a 4. What's that, Charlie? That's a retire, isn't it?
Retire, yes. Well, it's false.
We'll just check the details and see whether I want to do a reroll.
4. Which
This is a line brigade.
line battalion, you rally. So if you're within 9 inches of me, so
Yep.
these ones, they will all have to take a step back.
Yeah. And they
And-
stay hesitant, don't they? So
But you don't really want that because you have 8 turns. It's a turn 8. You have 4 more turns, and you won't be able to push up. And you need to take this village.
I know, but I don't have any choice, and I'm not going to risk rolling a 1. A rally is good enough for me, despite your persuasive power. All right, let's activate, and we'll go hesitant with that brigade, but we'll take the retreat. So Charlie's being bold. He's charging this French line in the rear. He is exposing himself to a flank charge from the cuirassiers, but he is outside opportunity charge range, so I can't interrupt his charge. So his charge will be resolved first. So let's do the charge resolution. Charlie will be on a substantial bonus as he charges in. A bit of a retcon. Charlie decided that he didn't want to take the defensive volley for his charges going in simultaneously, so he simply charged the French line in the flank. Let's see how they do. Let's get it working on the modifiers. So this should be quite good for the Prussians. The French are on -6, mainly from being hit in the flank. We roll a 7, you roll a 10, so you win by 3, so you will melee with a land.
Oh, wasn't it 11?
Move them into
And it
contact.
rolled down and it went to a 4.
Into contact then, Charlie. Rules, and as much as it seems a bit tough on the French, French cuirassiers cannot join an ongoing infantry versus infantry combat. So I cannot charge my cuirassiers into this infantry melee that's already underway. So the potential countercharge from the cuirassiers is wasted, and being outside of 9 inches range, they couldn't do an opportunity charge either. So just too distant to join that combat. So we will leave the charge combat there and just check the table, see if we've got any other charges going. Right, this battalion is also charging back into Linney, see if we can fight our way in. We need some defensive fire from the Prussian garrison, Charlie. 3 shots from you against my charging battalion down here. You cause 1 more casualty. Okay, we will get to fight that combat later on in the combat phase. Any other charges? No other charges from you, Charlie? And no other charges from the French. All right, now on to normal movement, French to go first. So the French battery down here is going to go for this tempting target of 2 battalions of Landwehr that are moving across its front. We get a 3. Yeah. That's a fatigue casualty. Still risk a bounce through. No, we don't even get the bounce through. So no damage from that. My 12-pounders and my other battery are going to go against their new target, which is this newly arrived Prussian unit. So an 8 becomes a 7. That's 1 casualty, I think, from the 12-pounders. And a 10. So a 10 is better at long range, is 2 casualties. 3 casualties against that unit and a discipline test, Charlie. See what they get. A 7. They are fine. That's the end of the firing. Charlie's firing did not cause any casualties. His guns, caused some skirmish casualties, but nothing too major. So now we're down to hand-to-hand combat. Where do you want to start, Charlie? Do you want to start in the critical combat in the village, or do you want to start with the glory as you go into my flank?
We'll do the glory.
All right, let's go and work out what we need. All right, this is not good. The French have only got 2 dice for being unformed and flanked.
4.
We do cause 2 casualties, so we lose by 2, so it's not a complete disaster. So infantry versus infantry, we retreat and you take the ground, Charlie.
Did you D3?
No, we just retreat.
I thought that was with
Retreat, that's on charge result. The important combat in the village, I get 4 dice, Charlie gets 5. Let's see whether the French can fight their way back into Linney village. We get 2. And you get?
3, so it goes second round.
Goes to second round. Let's see if Charlie will get reinforcements, so I think we will retire. So here we are at turn 8, so the Prussians are, they're exposed to a cuirassier counter-attack, but they've captured this small farm building and driven the French off there with just a retreat result, so we need to put a retreat marker. Oh no, they were, yes, a retreat marker, weren't they? Then down here, the French have chosen to retire. Unfortunately, they weren't a retreat, otherwise Charlie might have got a Falter test on that brigade. We have formed up in the centre here, but our abilities to push the Prussians out are looking quite tough. All right, let's move on and do turn 9. Tragedy for the French. Their cuirassier brigade has gone hesitant. All their other brigades, apart from the one in the centre, are active, but we've lost initiative, and Charlie has got a forwards order on his Landwehr to reinforce the centre. All right, let's move with charges in turn 9. Any charges from Charlie? With the cuirassiers milling around, unsure how to commit themselves, the Landwehr have taken the opportunity. The battalion that was here that had broken the other battalions charged into the flank of this one, and the battalion that was around the side of the building has charged along the riverbed into the flank of this French battalion that was itself trying to cross the river. So we have 2 flank charges from the Landwehr. Let's see how those charges go. It'll be a devastating series of charges. Charlie, the Landwehr commander, is doing it again. All right, so he is on +4 for a flank charge, +5 for putting his commander in, and +6 because I have taken 4 casualties. I am also unformed, so it's a +8 on this charge result.
I bet you get 0.
I get a 6.
You're minus now. I get 8.
8. 8 plus 8 is 16. You've won by 10. That is a charge on and a breakthrough. That battalion is destroyed. All right, so this battalion here actually wasn't destroyed. It was where the Landwehr currently are. Took an extra casualty from the redoubt result. It went 6 backwards away from the charge, so through this infantry battalion, unforming it, and then fled back towards its table edge. We've now got another charge here. It's another +8, yeah, because this one has also taken 5 casualties and is now unformed. We roll a magnificent 4.
8.
Okay, that's another. That will be. You can't do more than 1 charge on a turn, but that will be D6 extra casualties on that unit. Roll for how many extra casualties?
2.
Takes 2 more, and then they flee 6 and a further. And then the third charge, the completion of the charge on. They just reached this battalion. They can't reach this battalion because they were just out of charge range. So you can wheel up to 45 degrees. So they've gone into the flank of this formed unit. This is
brigades,
yeah. So we have 2 faltering brigades already because both those battalions were from different brigades anyway. So let's see what we get. Oh, a bit better. The French get a 9.
No.
You get a 6.
But
Plus 4. So 5. So you're on 6, 10, 11 plays 9. You've won by 2. So that'll probably just be... This one is only +2 because Charlie's already taken 4 casualties. He doesn't have his commander. I am not unformed, and the French have thrown their commander in. So let's see whether we can survive in this result. We only roll a 4. You've got a 6, so you win by 4. So I think on a win by 4, you take the ground and I suffer D3 casualties. So I suffer 6 casualties, that's 3 casualties because we halve it, and then I have to retreat. So after those devastating charges, the Landwehr, although they're exposed and its regiment has it really got a lot of trouble with these cuirassiers in its flank, has broken the back of the French assault. I don't know how they're going to come back. We've got several routing units down here. We've taken loads of casualties, and Charlie was also effective with his forwards order. We have another Landwehr brigade moving in, and the Berg firmly in control here. And still all the Prussian cavalry and artillery available. All right, so the Prussian heavy guns are going to fire at the cuirassiers. Effective range, Charlie, what are you going to get?
8.
You get an 8 at effective range, is 2 more casualties on those cuirassiers. That's a different one, yeah. And then you've got this battery in the centre. You could also move your Berg skirmishers, I would suggest, Charlie, to the other side of the river.
They'll fire against these again.
Fire against them, or you can fire against that battalion that's at closer range. You don't have to re-roll. I'll let you keep the 6.
I'll do against that.
Yeah, you would do. They're a closer target. Okay, so that's going to be at effective range. That's 4 casualties and a discipline test on this unit. They are already on 4, so they go up to 8. This may not be good, so this will be a discipline test at -2. A 4 goes down to a 2, so they have to retreat and they take D3 extra casualties. They will be off the board. They take an extra 2 casualties, so they're on a 10, and that unit flees off table. So they didn't actually go off table, they unformed this battalion and then were able to fall back and form up, or at least stop behind them. But we just have a mass of panicking French troops here, completely disorganised. Charlie, you've got your skirmishers to fire against that battalion. Oh, destiny test for the 6. A 10. That's a falter, but everything down there is already faltering, so we already have 2 falter tests on both French brigades. Yeah, it already was faltering.
The general's more clear, so we know what they are.
Yeah.
I'll put him here so we see him better.
Yeah. So they're both faltering, both brigades, but they already were.
Combat here too.
We do, yeah. And you've got your skirmishers down here to fire, Charlie?
So against them.
Yeah, 2 dice.
They might get over 4 casualties now.
No, they don't. And then you fired these guns. 2 more shots from a skirmish screen down here against my skirmishers. 1 more casualty.
That's a
Base gone. And then you've got your skirmish screen down here. Finally, this was your reinforced force skirmish screen.
3 more bases left.
So,
one carousel and just 2 normal.
4 shots from these skirmishers
4 shots.
against the French. 1 more casualty against that French line battalion. Okay, I think that's all of the Prussian firing done. Any more firing, Charlie?
I
No.
wish we had more, but we don't.
Okay, so 2 shots for my skirmishers. Don't do anything. My artillery battery on the hill. The heavy guns will do a 9. That becomes an 8. An 8 at effective range is 2 casualties on this battalion out in the open. And then firing the divisional artillery. I think they'll fire at these guys behind the hedge. They're at long range. No, they're probably at effective range as well, aren't they? Effective range, that becomes a 5. That's 1 casualty
4.
against those guys.
Because they're in cover.
Yeah, it becomes a 5. A 6 goes down by 1
And then
to a 5.
too. They've got 5
No,
casualties.
it's from them.
Okay.
So I think that's 1 casualty against those guys. Almost all our casualty counters in play now. Then the French artillery battery up here will open fire at the Landwehr, probably at long range. That's quite a good roll. A 10 is 2 casualties and a discipline test against the Landwehr.
We ran out now.
Okay. And then a discipline test on the Landwehr, Charlie. For
Unformed.
go unformed, yeah. So not a disastrous result. All right. So no other French skirmishers. Oh, we do have some French skirmishers down here who are panicking. They're cut off. They will fire at the Landwehr. They cause 1 casualty on the Landwehr. That's it. Did you fire with your garrison in the village?
No.
You can fire 2 shots against my skirmishers if you like.
No.
I think that's it. I've got my 3 shots for my skirmish screen against the Landwehr. And I caused 2 casualties against this Landwehr battalion. We'll just put
We'll use a cavalry
a
one.
dice next to them. That's all right.
We've got a last one. It's not.
Is it a cavalry one, is it?
Cavalry.
All right, so they're on 2. All right, so I think that's it for shooting. It's now time for hand-to-hand combat. I think you're going into my flank with a land, Charlie. So you will have 5 dice.
Yep.
How many casualties have you taken? You haven't taken 4 yet, so you're not a lower morale status, are you? So you're still counting as line. So 6 because of a LAN, and I'm on 5, 4 because I'm unformed, 3 because I'm hitting the flank,
And you've got 7 casualties.
and so 2. So this is not going to be good for the French again. Let's see what we do.
3.
We cause 1 casualty, they retreat, and that's probably it for them. I don't think there's any more space on the table
You've got another falter. You've got 2 falters for each
for each brigade. So they retreat off to keep up the momentum of the assault in what is turn 10. The Prussians allocated rerolls to all of their brigades and all went active, including the reinforcing Landwehr down here, and for the first time in 4 turns, their cavalry brigade. For the French, we had to allocate all of our ADCs for falter tests, so all the other brigades were on raw rolls, and for the second turn in a row, our cuirassiers, clearly completely disturbed by the collapse of the centre, are in a fit of indecision and have gone hesitant. All right, let's do our falter test. This is for the small 3 battalion brigade, which I think only has 2 battalions left on the table. It does obey orders, I think, so we'll stick to that. All right, and then the second brigade.
This was quite big.
This is the big brigade. This is of 5 battalions,
Unformed, so it doesn't matter.
and they obey orders as
Everyone is
well.
unformed and broken, so
They are all unformed and in a terrible state. I'm going to do, let's roll for initiative, because this could be fairly important. French get an 8, Prussians get a 7. French are on a 7. Who had initiative last turn?
I did.
Okay, so the Prussians keep initiative, which is important for them because they are going to keep charging through this mass of French infantry. All right, let's do those first 2 charge moves, and then we might. So these French battalions, other than being all unformed because they were all routing, are on 10, 7, 7, only 2, 7, 4, and 10 casualties. So this French division is basically wrecked. We'll see how these 2 charges by the Landwehr go, and that will give Charlie another great page in the history of his Landwehr Corps to see this game. Very depressingly for the French, I don't know why I'm doing this. Charlie again is on +7 as he charges in. I roll a 7, he rolls a 4.
I win by 4.
He wins by, it's not quite so devastating, is it?
Yeah.
So 4 plus 7 is 11 against 7. Yep, you win by 4, and you'll. I will retreat probably off the table because I have no space, and you'll take. All right, another charge here for the French. +2 for Charlie. I roll a 6. He rolls a 4, so that's a straight combat. All right. Okay. At this point, the French heavy cavalry have decided there's nothing more to fight for. They can't see any chance of breaking through to Linney. They can't resurrect this French division. All the other French forces, although in not too bad a state, are probably not well placed to reinforce this attack. And all of these French battalions are wrecked. We've now seen 3 destroyed, and most of the rest of these are in a terrible state. They will be able to form up this turn, but we still have a real dilemma as to whether they can break through. So we could also, Charlie could move his cavalry forward this turn to help secure this flank. So at the price still of a Lambert battalion or brigade here, regiment rather, that might take some punishment, he's broken the French assault on Linney. Well done to Charlie, well done to the Prussians. Hope you enjoyed today's game. Really does show the power of flank attacks and those charges on. Was really disappointing for the French that the cuirassiers rolled those 2 successive falter tests. Otherwise, we might have been able to resurrect the centre. But with all these forces occupying Ligny and the Landwehr reserve arriving as well, I can't see the French actually would get back into the village. All right, see you again next time. Hope you're enjoying the videos and the campaign. Cheers, everyone. Bye.